All right, gamers, who's ready to make way too much cake for 2 people to eat? Things are a little messy because we have a roommate in the process of moving out. I'm actually going with a rose and almond flavor to balance out the floralness of it all, especially because a lot of people think that straight up rose can tend a bit on the perfumey side for baked goods. But let me just do a quick go over of the ingredients that we'll be using today. First off is 5 cups of all-purpose flour, because this is going to be a very, very large cake. 3 cups of sugar, 2.5 cups of butter, which is the equivalent of about 5 sticks of butter, 3 teaspoons of baking powder, 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda, 8 eggs, 2 cups of sour cream, about 1.25 teaspoons of salt, and our almond extract and rose syrup. Now, I'm using a concentrated rose syrup meant for baking, but if you're using a rose water, you're going to want to probably double the amount that I put in, because it's going to be less concentrated than my rose syrup. Both of these, by the way, just for your preparation, are a lot stronger than your standard vanilla extracts. So whatever amount you would think would be correct to do vanilla extract for a cake, do not do that same amount exactly for this. Both of these combined are going to be some pretty powerful flavorings. Now, these are the required base ingredients for the cake itself. I am also going to make my own icing and decorations and do a little bit of filling and a soak for the cake. I'll go over that when I get to it. But all of those things are optional, and stuff like frostings and fillings are the kind of thing where you can really put your own spin on it. So I don't want to say this is like a recipe that you must follow. First, we're going to put all of our dry ingredients into the same large mixing bowl and whisk those together. And we're going to take our non-sugar dry ingredients and combine those in a large mixing bowl. So that is going to be all of our flour, all of our baking powder and baking soda, and all of our salt. And we're just going to whisk that together. I have 2 recommendations for this part of the recipe. One is get a wire spatula instead of a silicone spatula. It's not a spatula. Get a wire whisk and not a rubber or silicone one, just so that your experience and touch feel isn't terrible. And the second is to be very careful as you whisk it, so you don't get your powders all over your very nice jacket. Speaking of the jacket, the coat that I have today is the embroidered men's frock coat from the Giambattista Valli x H&M collaboration from a couple of years back. I always think it's really funny when like super fast fashion stuff like H&M and Forever 21 does collaborations with like big fancy Italian design house. But you know what? I also kind of love it, because that makes their aesthetic more accessible for people who say, make $18 an hour working at a French bakery. Now, that's not to say that it's a totally cheap piece either, because it's really, really well made. You can see all of the detail, and the embroidery work is absolutely gorgeous. It's a very thick, nicely finished fabric with a gorgeous custom lining. This is one of my favorite coats, and it was a thing that I had to save up for and search for a while, because I spent about 1.5 years just lusting over it after they first did the design reveal. But I'm also a person who is very strongly of the opinion that investing in fashion pieces that are well made, will last you forever, and you know you're going to wear a lot, is very, very worth it, especially because we live in a world where we kind of undervalue all of the labor in the average item of clothing anyway. So it's more about not necessarily caring about what's fashionable or what's trendy, but what is something that you really, really love, and going for that. In a different mixing bowl, we're going to add all of our butter. It is so much butter, but I'm a southerner, so it's fine, as well as all of our sugar. And I'm going to be using a stand mixer for this because I have access to one, but you can definitely do this with a normal hand mixer too. You're going to mix those together in the stand mixer at a relatively low speed, just to combine the butter and the sugar, and then you're going to move it up a little bit faster to really mix them together and fluff them up. We're trying to beat and fluff up that butter as much as we possibly can. You want it to be really fluffy and light in color, which might take a while, 3 to 5 minutes. So while we wait for that to get whipped up, let me talk about something else that takes way too long. I spent about 110 hours during COVID times hand embroidering this Rose of Versailles themed sweatshirt. Oscar has been one of my favorite fictional characters and biggest inspirations as a person for much of my life. Everyone thinks, you know, it's a romance manga meant for teenage girls. It's probably going to be like a fun, light reading. No! No, nothing good happens when you have a cast of noblemen and the French Revolution is occurring. I also want to show you the back of this just to prove you can see all the little stitches, all of the many, many hours of goosebumps that were watched on Netflix by doing so. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into this project. Hopefully far, far more than will go into this current project. Far, far more than will go into this current project. You might notice, if you are an eagle-eyed viewer, that there's a couple of small chicken tikka masala stains on this. And you might ask yourself, Kat, if you spent so much of your soul working on a complicated piece of clothing, why on earth would you allow there to become chicken tikka masala stains on it? And my answer to that is, if you have nice clothes, regardless of the amount of money, time, effort that you spent on them, and you don't wear them, why do you have them? Once it gets appropriately light and fluffy, we're going to add in a little bit of egg at a time. I like pouring it so that just one egg yolk falls into the bowl at a time. I'm going to start with just 1 teaspoon of the rose syrup and about half a teaspoon of the almond extract and mix those in after the eggs have been mixed. I'm taking it off the stand mixer to do this last part by hand. And what I'm going to do is pour about a third of the flour, a third of the sour cream, a third of the flour, a third of the sour cream, mixing and alternating between each of those until it's all fully incorporated. As another side note, this is a very thick cake because I'm going to be doing a lot of layering and stacking in multiple tiers. But if it's a little bit too thick for you to stir and it just doesn't feel right, you can always add a little bit more heavy cream or 2% milk as needed, gradually, just a little bit at a time to loosen up the mixture a bit. Now the cakes are all in the oven at 350 degrees. However, I have 2 more little problems to deal with caused by my greatest enemies, science and capitalism. I only own 1 set of tiered cake pans, so I'm just going to be baking twice instead of buying another set. If you have the money to buy another set, just do that and bake it all at the same time. You'll have a much easier time. The process will go quicker. And the second is that because physics is real, the small layers are going to cook far, far faster than the big layer. So what I'm going to do is literally just sit in front of this playing games on my phone and every 5 minutes check the tiny layers to see if they're done. I'm just going to do the normal toothpick test for that. Now, these 3 I've already taken out of the oven and prepped now that they're done. I actually really like using alcohol-based soaks for my cake soaks because I think it imparts a really interesting depth of flavor. So for this cake, I used about 2 cups of very cheap Riesling, which I combined with about 1 cup of sugar, boiling in the saucepan for a bit until all the sugar melted, and just a dash of the rose syrup. So that is going to be brushed on all the layers. I've already brushed it on these layers, but I'm going to do the same with our upper layers here in a second. Since these layers have already been soaked, I'm going to apply a thin layer of almond buttercream that I already made to the top of them. And now I'm going to add just a little bit of strawberry spread to each of the layers on top of where I put the buttercream, because even if the flavor of the strawberry is only very slight in terms of its overall addition to the cake, just a little bit of fruit accent I find really brightens up a lot of the other flavors, especially when you're working with more delicate floral flavors like rose. After that, I'm simply going to stack my cakes on top of their appropriately sized partners, and it just fits, like so. Speaking of fits, I wanted to show off the bits of the outfit that I haven't already. My blouse and the jabot that goes with it is part of the Romeo series from Alice and the Pirates. They re-release the Romeo blouse constantly in all sorts of patterns and fabrics. It's one of my favorites, although I do always wonder why their blouses consistently fit me, but their one-piece long-sleeve dresses never ever do in a million years. What is up with that? I'm lucky and fit, however, when it comes to the pants from Metamorphose, because they're pretty much the only Japanese Lolita brand that I think makes pants that reliably fit, American sizes as opposed to just like petite Japanese sizes. They actually have quite a lot of range in their pants, which I'm a person with fairly wide hips and big thighs, so I really appreciate that. Socks are from Enchanted Dreamwear, which is an indie brand, and shoes are just thrifted because I will never, ever, ever in my life buy expensive shoes unless they're made of real leather. Now that those layers are stacked, I'm going to brush the soak into the top of them pretty generously on this one because it's a relatively dense cake, so using this to help keep the moisture is going to help it out a lot. And now I'm actually just going to let gravity do its work and let the soak really get in there through the cake overnight. Another reason I want to do it overnight is because I am very, very tired and I want enough time so I can decorate each layer individually and then assemble them in the morning. We're back for day 2 and it is time to begin icing our cakes. I just whipped up a stiff whipped cream icing that I'm going to be using for the outside. All that is your standard heavy cream, sugar, vanilla combination. But my little trick that I do is I also add in some sour cream into the mix. It gives a nice little bit of tartness to it that helps offset the cloying sweetness that whipped cream can get from time to time. I'm going to start with just doing a light crumb coat on everything so that when I take time to make the icing pretty later, it'll be a bit easier and less likely to have bits of cake stuck in it. So now I have my base coat on. I'm about to do a second layer of thicker frosting. I will also add to it that you see how I've domed the whipped cream a little bit on the smaller layer. That's just to help with the kind of design I have in mind later. You'll see where I'm going with that. And similarly, I'm not going to worry about doing a nice outer coating on the middle layer because that's going to be covered with a different kind of design, which I'll do momentarily. But in the meantime, I'm going to coat the big cake.
All right, rolling.
Oh, not rolling yet. Oh, this works, actually. Now I'm going to put this in the fridge to chill for a bit and get to work on my top layer. I pre-piped all of these flowers earlier with a standard American buttercream. They're all slightly different colors so I can arrange them as a gradient with the blossoms. I'm going to start by placing the brightest pink blossoms on the top center. There's still some space on the bottom and some flowers left over that I'll be using when I put the layer on top of the rest of the cake. For now, I'm going to go chill it in the fridge.
So, from here on out in the video, I enabled a secret microphone setting that... Oh, hello, Finn. From here on out in the microphone setting, I accidentally enabled a secret recording mode that adds an epic church-like reverb to everything my voice says from here on out. I've minimized the usage of these clips as much as possible, but the ending of this video is going to sound a little needlessly epic.
Now it's time to start some stacking. Now this cake should be dense enough that I don't need to use cake dowels and can just kind of plop it in the middle, but with how today's been, we'll see if that actually works. A cake. So unfortunately, a lot just happened off camera, but most of what happened off camera was mental anguish. So I'm going to talk a bit about fixes that I went through here. First, I maneuvered all of the flowers that I had on it just to provide some coverage. I made some extra little marzipan bowl decorations. Balls. To sort of be a through line through the entire piece. Extra flowers on top of the marzipan. Clean things up a little bit. And don't look at the back. It's fine. We don't need to look at the back. This is television, baby. Now it's time for me to pop on our last pre-prepared layer. I'm glad that worked, because if it didn't, I would cry. Do we eat it now? I want to eat it. We need plates to eat it, unfortunately. Prepare thine plate.
Plate ready.
It's so cute and pink, you guys.
This cake looks delightful, despite anything emotionally attached to the cake.
Yeah.
It does look quite pleasant.
Okay. We'll give it a little tasty taste.
Oh, Mariana,
It is very good.
it's a tasty ass cake, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So you made an excellent rose cake.
Yep. I ended up making an excellent rose cake.